Hello everyone. So today I'm going to be talking about liquid concealers and letting you know about my experiences with the ones that I have tried with regard to my own dry and mature and sensitive skin. And so in 2024 there were 9 new liquid concealers that were released, and I counted up all of the ones that I've tried, and there were 30 of them total. And so I'll be talking about the ones that were released last year in a little bit more depth, but I will be talking about all of the ones that I tried and let you know my experiences with those. So first, a little bit of information about me. I am 60 years old and I do have dry and very sensitive skin, and I've never had any kind of cosmetic procedures like injections or surgery, and I'm not really intending to do that. And so one issue that I have with makeup products is that I am hoping that it will help me to look a little bit fresher and maybe a little bit younger, and I definitely don't want it to be exacerbating the look of the wrinkles or other kinds of issues that I have going on in my face. And then in addition, I have a zero tolerance policy with regard to being willing to use any products that cause irritation to my skin. And one thing that I have found is that there are certain ingredients that always do irritate my skin. And I know that these particular ingredients are very problematic for many other people as well. And so I just don't talk about products with those kinds of ingredients on this channel. Now, one thing that I did find in the past is that I really had very bad luck with liquid concealers, and that there really were almost none of them that I found to be acceptable, because all of them failed me either in terms of making my wrinkles look a lot worse, or they caused irritation in my skin, or in a lot of cases they did both of those things. And so one concealer in the past that I actually did really like, that I'll talk about in a little bit more depth, is this one from Chanel, which is called Sublimage Le Correcteur Yeux. But this one is $105, and I can understand why a lot of people would be really hesitant to spend that much money on a concealer. And it also is kind of on the messy side because it comes in this jar. Now, I did find that in the past there were certain liquid concealers that worked for me pretty well as eyelid primers, and that helped to cover over the darkness on my eyelids and helped me to put on eyeshadow that would stay on longer. But in terms of using them under my eyes or on the rest of my face, I really didn't find any concealers in the past that I found to be acceptable in terms of not making my wrinkles look worse. But things seem to have really changed this past year, and I actually found several different liquid concealers that I think have worked well for me, both in terms of not irritating my skin and also in terms of looking okay in the context of my wrinkles and not making my wrinkles look worse. So that has really been a good breakthrough for me, and I'm especially happy because I can use now the same concealer on my eyelids that I do on the rest of my face, and that saves a little bit of a step in terms of having to use multiple products. So one thing that I did when I was thinking about this video and trying to figure out if I had missed anything that I really wanted to try was to make a list of all of the best-selling concealers, liquid concealers that are sold at Sephora. And so what I kind of feel like when I look at this list is that an awfully lot of the concealers on the list are getting pretty old, and they are ones that I feel have kind of problematic ingredients to them, and that they also don't necessarily perform that well in terms of what I'm looking for when I have tried them. But what I think is the case is that concealer is an interesting category because it is one that I think people buy over and over again. And I do think that once people get to the point where they've tried a concealer and it's performing acceptably for them, then they will use it over and over again and buy it fairly often. Whereas I think with foundations, people tend to be a little more likely to be trying out a new foundation in the store and searching for something that works even better than what they already have. Whereas with concealers, I think that there tends to be a lot of repeat buying and sort of non-thinking about it too much. And that's probably the way I would have been before I got so interested in this topic either. And so while there have been an awfully lot of concealers that have been released in recent years, an awfully lot of the ones that are really the most popular tend to be older versions that probably I'm not going to like that much, or that I haven't liked that much when I've tried them. Now, one thing that I will say about liquid concealers is that most of them do not last very long, and especially the ones that don't irritate my skin tend not to last very long in the container because they tend not to have as many preservatives in them. And so in a lot of cases, these concealers do have a 6-month stated usage life on the bottle, but regardless, I tend to only use concealers for a maximum of 6 months because I don't want to be using something that might be contaminated with some kind of a bacteria or fungus or something like that. So now let's talk about all of the concealers that I tried out that were released during 2024, and I will start with the most expensive one and then I will work my way down to the least expensive one. And so the first product is one that is from Victoria Beckham, and this is a collaboration with Augustina Spotter, and I was actually kind of enthusiastic about that concept when I heard about it because I am kind of a fan of Augustina Spotter since I think that his skin creams have been helpful for me. And so this is a very expensive product, and it also is even more expensive on a per gram basis because there's not very much product that is actually in this container. So it's $68, and then when I calculated it out, it is $28 per milliliter, which is more than 3 times as much money as any of the other concealers that I have tried out so far. And so this product comes in a pen form, and so it looks like this, and then it actually has like a little brush on the end of here, and so in order to get product onto that little brush, you press this button at the bottom, and then a small amount of the concealer will come out of the tube and saturate the brush, and then you can use this on your face. And they have really instructed people to use this primarily as an under eye concealer, and they also say that it can be used on a spot basis to cover over little imperfections on your face. And they are saying that it offers light to medium coverage. And so I tried this on a number of occasions, and I did find that I thought that it worked nicely under my eyes. I thought that it looked very nice under my eyes, that it didn't exacerbate the texture. And I thought that in general that was attractive, and I thought that using it on a spot basis on, say, this area on my cheeks, that was not too bad. I did think that when I used it like in this area around here, that I thought it was emphasizing my pores a little bit, and so I'm a little bit disinclined to use it in that area for that reason. And in general, I think it's probably better to not use this too widely on your face because I do think that you would run out of the product really fast if you did that. And so using it, especially on a spot basis, I think that might be an okay idea. And using it under the eyes might be an okay idea just because there are those skincare ingredients in it, and so that might be helpful for your eyes in general. And they are saying that within 4 weeks, you are supposed to be noticing some improvements in your skin. And so what they are saying is that this does have a number of different skincare ingredients in it. And the one that might be most interesting to many people like myself is the fact that it does include some of the proprietary peptide that Augustina Spotter came up with and that is in all of his products. And so it's hard to know how much of that particular peptide is in this product compared to how much you would be getting in a eye cream or a moisturizer or something like that. But it is something that I did find to be appealing, and that is called Oligopeptide 177 or TFC8. And then there are 2 other peptides that are in this product, and plus there is prickly pear stem extract, which is supposed to be anti-aging, and Sisymbrium Ireo seed oil, which is supposed to be anti-puffing. And then there's some squalane and some cocoa butter. And I'm not seeing any silicones in this particular concealer. And it is made in Italy, and of course there's a usage life of 6 months. And I found that the shade FL2, which is light with neutral warm undertones, I thought that was a pretty good shade match for me. And there are 16 shades total. Now the problem for me with this product is that it includes some synthetic fragrance that I found to be annoying. So this is called ethylene brassylate, and this is a musk-like fragrance that was developed by DuPont in the 1940s, and it is created in a laboratory. And I I did notice this really strongly when I first started to use the product, and I found that it became increasingly annoying the more that I used it, and that eventually it did start to give me headaches. And when I let the Victoria Beckham company know about this, they did automatically just give me a refund, so I thought that that was a good thing. But in general, I don't think that it really makes a lot of sense to me why this company decided to put this particular synthetic fragrance in this concealer. I don't think it was necessary, and I think that it's just, especially since Victoria Beckham is supposed to be a clean beauty company, and especially since Augustinus Bader is not using anything like that in any of their other products, it was definitely a surprise to me that they would put that particular fragrance ingredient in this. And there are a couple of other supposedly natural ingredients in this that do also have a scent. So there is linalool and citronellol and geraniol, and so some people can be sensitive to those ingredients as well. So this was very sad for me because I was looking forward to giving this a try, and I did have a really good experience with it apart from the smell or the scent that's in it. Now, whether or not I would have repurchased it if I had used up the whole tube, and I think that I would have used it up really fast because even if I'm only putting on a very small amount of it, there's not very much in here. I'm not sure. I think it is pretty expensive, and I am not convinced that using something like this rather than using just a skincare that has the same ingredients in it would be as good. But on the other hand, I do think that it looked really nice on my skin, especially the area under my eyes, and I do think it performed well. So I wish I had been able to give it a try for longer. And then the next product is from a company called Creal, and this is a brand new company to the marketplace. It came out during fall 2024, and this is headed up by a woman who has a long history in the cosmetics business, and she helped to launch Victoria Beckham cosmetics, and she also has been involved in helping Tom Ford and some other luxury companies to launch high-end or luxury cosmetic lines. And so her idea with this particular line of cosmetics is that she wanted there to be a line that would be specifically targeting women who are over 40 and that would also be clean beauty. And this particular product is priced at $58, and that sounds really, really expensive for a concealer, but it also is the case that you are getting more of this liquid concealer than you are, I think, in really any other product that I've ever purchased. So there are 9 milliliters of product in the bottle, and most of the other products have more like 6 milliliters, and of course the Victoria Beckham one had less than 3 milliliters in it. And so if you calculate it out on a per milliliter basis, this is actually only a little bit more expensive than some of the other concealers that seem to be fairly equivalent, but that have less prestigious names associated with them, like for instance the Saie concealer. And this one does not have any silicones in it, but it does have some substances that might work a little bit like silicones. And then in addition, it has some fermented ingredients, so lactobacillus ferment lysate, pomegranate extract, green tea extract, which is supposed to brighten, caffeine, which is supposed to reduce puffiness, and sodium hyaluronate, which is supposed to be hydrating, and aloe vera, which is supposed to be smoothing. And she says that this is supposed to have a special flexing formula to it, and so therefore it should be able to look nice on your face, even if you do have some wrinkles or other textures. And she says that it should be appropriate for both use on your under eye area and on the rest of your face as well. And she suggests that you can either put it on with the brush or you can put it on with the fingers and then blend it in. And in terms of the shades, there are 10 shades, and there are really only a few shades that are for darker skin. And I have shade 3, and this is a light neutral shade, and I thought that this was actually a quite nice shade for me. And I would say that of all the concealers that I tried so far, that this is the one that I like the most, and that I do think it looks very nice on my skin, and that I can use it in all different kinds of ways. So I can use it as an eyelid primer and on my under eye area and around my nose and on my cheeks if I have a small spot. And so in general, I do think that this is a very nice product, and I don't feel like it's been irritating at all. And I do think that in terms of my wrinkles, that it's worked pretty well in that context. And so that is actually the product that I am wearing today, and that is actually all I am wearing in terms of either concealer or foundation. And so I will take off my glasses and you can get a little bit more of a look in terms of how that is holding up for me today. And I'm pretty satisfied with how this has worked out. I think that it is actually not quite as expensive as some people think based on the cost for the bottle, and I do think that it has been a very nice product for me, so I'm really happy about that. And so far, I do think that this is by far my favorite product from Creal. Actually, their lipstick does have ethylene bromelain in it, which is the same stuff that is in that concealer pen from Victoria Beckham, so that is even more perplexing to me. But this one does not have any kind of a fragrance ingredient in it, and I'm not detecting any kind of a scent to it, so I'm really happy about that. And then the next product is from Westman Atelier, and so this one also came out last year. And what I found when I first put this one on is that I thought that it was a little bit too emphasizing of the texture that is around my eyes, and so I was a little disappointed about that. But after a while, I started to experiment using it more, and I realized that this does have such a high level of pigment in it that I don't really need to use very much of it in terms of covering up everything that I need to have covered up. And so I did find that when I started to use a lot less of it and to just put on a few dots and then to try to blend that in, that it stopped emphasizing the texture nearly as much. And now I think it actually looks fine in terms of both my under eye areas and in terms of using it elsewhere on my face. And I do also feel that it is a very nice product to use as an eyelid primer. So this has a total price for a bottle of $48, so that is a little bit less than the Creal in terms of the cost of the product. But in terms of cost per milliliter, there's only 6 milliliters in this bottle, and so it's actually quite expensive in terms of the cost per milliliter. And in terms of the ingredients that are in here, it has a peptide in here, it has sodium hyaluronate, caffeine, which is depuffing again, sunflower seed oil, and a few different moisturizing type ingredients as well. And this one does not have any silicones in it. Westman Atelier seems to be determined not to put any silicones in any of their products. But again, this one does have some ingredients in it that function similarly to silicones. And one thing that they're claiming is that in this product there is what they're calling a vital wake-up complex, and they're saying that this may be able to lessen the look of dark circles over time, and I don't know if that's the case, and I use a lot of other things and moisturizers and eye creams that also might be doing that, and so it's really hard to know, but at least I thought that I would mention that they are making that claim. And in terms of the shades, there are 16 shades, and they seem to be fairly well distributed from light to dark. On the other hand, what I have heard from a number of people that have something like medium skin is that the shades in that particular range especially tend to lean on the yellow side. And so the one that I have is L4, and I think that this one has been pretty good. I haven't had any objections to that. It said that it was supposed to be a peach color, and I think that on my skin it has worked really well. But I do think that some of these ranges may be quite a bit too yellow. But all in all, personally, I do think that this is a very nice product, and I have been using it fairly frequently. I've been rotating among a few of these different concealers, and this is one that I do think is much better than anything that has been released before this year, and it is in one of my top concealers in terms of what has been out this year. And so I'm not sure that I like this one more than the Creal one or as much as the Creal one, but it is close, and I do feel perfectly fine about using it, and I do think it looks nice on me. And I have been rotating a few of these concealers that I've really liked recently, and I think that this one has been very nice. And like a lot of the Westman Atelier products, I do think that it comes in a very attractive container, and it is kind of streamlined and slim, and so I do like that about it as well. And then next I have a concealer from Laura Mercier, and actually when I shot the footage of me putting this on, I shot the footage with the Laura Mercier concealer on half my face, and then I shot the footage with the Saie concealer that is called the Slip Tint Concealer on the other half of my face. And so I thought that that would allow you to do some comparisons, and it also made it a little bit faster in terms of my shooting this new footage. And in terms of the video footage, I decided that for each of the concealers that I filmed, I would shoot one of my RMS lipsticks. So they did launch fairly recently a new range that they're calling the Nudes, and I have picked up all of those different shades during the Black Friday and holiday sales. And so I thought this would be a good opportunity to just demonstrate those on camera. And so in this particular one, for the Laura Mercier and the Saie, I am using the lipstick shade that is called Naomi. And that is the one that I have on today, actually. And then the next concealer is from Saie, and this is called the Slip Tint Concealer, and this was released in the spring of 2024, and some of the ingredients that it has in this that are supposed to be good in terms of skincare include sodium hyaluronate, niacinamide, polyglutamic acid, marshmallow root extract, ascorbyl palmitate, which is a vitamin C, and then amla extract, which is supposed to be vitamin C that is coming from gooseberry, and glycerin. This one does not have any silicones in it. And in terms of the cost, it is $26 for a tube of this, but this does not have very much product in here. And so the cost per milliliter is $5.60, and that's only a little bit less than the Sarah Creal. So this is actually a high quality concealer, and they are charging a fairly premium price for it. And there are 25 shades of this particular product, and I chose shade 5, which is light with peach undertones, and I think that this has worked really, really well for me. And I would say that in general that this one is actually quite close to the Sarah Creal concealer. I think it performs pretty much the same, maybe not quite as well, but I do think it's actually really, really good, and I think it's very similar, and I don't mind using this at all. And I think that it might be the case that I will pick this one up again in preference to the Sarah Creal one. I'm not sure yet, but I do think that this one is perfectly fine. It hasn't caused any irritation at all. I do think it looks really nice, and I don't think it's gotten nearly as much attention as it deserves. I don't think that they have really promoted it for more mature skin, and so I think that not as many people have tried it, but I do think that this is a really good alternative. And so the Laura Mercier one, this came out at the beginning of 2024, and so it was the first concealer that I found that I thought was kind of tolerable in terms of it not irritating my skin, and that also was one that I thought looked okay on me. So I don't think it looks as good as either the Westman Atelier one or the Sarah Creal one, and I think that it's a little bit not perfect in terms of not irritating my skin, and I wouldn't use this one on my eyes as an eyelid primer. I don't think that it's non-irritating enough for that, but I do think that compared to most of the concealers that have been released in the past, I do think this was a pretty good one. And so some of the skincare ingredients that are included in this one include shea butter, sodium hyaluronate, trehalose, and then there's paracress extract, which they say is firming and smoothing the look and feel of the skin, and then also green tea and cacao extract, which has antioxidants in it. And so they claim that this is supposed to be good for the skin, and they say that it is supposed to be defending against environmental stressors. And this one does have silicones in it, but it does not have cyclic silicones in it. And this concealer is made in the USA, and there are 22 shades, and the one that I chose after doing some experimentation is called 1N1, which is fair with neutral cool undertones. And I think in terms of the shade, that has been fine for me. And in general, I think that this is not a bad concealer, but I really haven't used it all that much, especially after I got some of these other concealers later in the year. I really thought that those were better. But at least it is one that I would be willing to use. And then moving on, I have two more concealers, both of which were released in 2024. So one is from Iris and Romeo, and then the other one is from Kylie Cosmetics. And then in this video, I am showing the RMS lipstick, which is in the shade Miranda. And that one is actually not in the nudes line. That is actually a little bit more saturated, and that is a rose type of a color. And I think that that one is a very nice product also, and I got this fairly recently. And then in terms of the Kylie concealer, this one, by the way, should be available at many Ulta stores. And so you may want to go to Ulta and try on the various concealers that they have there and to see if you can find one that works for you. And they do have 40 shades, and I think that all 40 shades are available in the Ulta store that I go to. And I think that that is really unusual. I do think that this is more shades in terms of concealer than really any of the other products that I have used. And the shade that I picked out was 2N, which is fair with subtle, neutral, peachy undertones. And this is a concealer that does include silicones. And in terms of the skincare ingredients, this is supposed to include panthenol, Centella asiatica, which is gotu kola and is a fairly popular skincare ingredient, especially I think in skincare that is supposed to be targeting, I think, younger people, and also rose flower extract and vitamin E. And in terms of coverage, it says that this has medium buildable coverage with a natural finish. So Kylie Cosmetics is a brand that is now owned with a majority stake by Coty, and so they are manufacturing the products and making a lot of the decisions in terms of what is offered. And I do think that this is an interesting brand to me because it is a clean beauty brand, and it is one of the brands that is a little bit less expensive than a lot of the clean beauty brands that are available, and it is pretty easily available through Ulta. And I have had some good luck with some of the products that I have tried that are from Kylie, and in particular, I did like their skin tint quite a bit. But in general, I also think that it's the case that this is a line that's more targeted towards, I think, younger people than I am, and I think that that is the case with this particular concealer, that it seems to be a little bit dry on my skin, and it seems to not be flexing with my wrinkles as much as I would like, and so I think it's maybe not really intended for use by people my age. But in general, I don't think that it irritated my skin, and I think that it was okay from that perspective, and I think that a lot of people probably would do well with it. And so the Iris and Romeo concealer, this one is called the Best Skin Days Concealer, and it is $32. And this one, in terms of the skincare ingredients, there aren't any silicones, and it includes sodium hyaluronate, allantoin, which is supposed to be good for like eczema, and niacinamide, kakadu plum, and licorice root extract. And so what they are saying is that this is a supercharged eye serum and dark spot treatment inside a hydrating concealer with a brightening, invisible second skin finish. And so the kakadu plum is supposed to be really high in vitamin C, and so that is supposed to be brightening and helping with dark circles. And then the niacinamide is supposed to just be a general skincare ingredient. And then the licorice, they are saying that this blocks melatonin production, and so that this may be helpful for things like age spots as well as for dark circles, possibly, depending on which kind you have, I would think. And this one is available in 15 shades, and I am using shade number 2, which they say is light with cool neutral undertones. And you can see what you think of this one. I actually think that this one was surprisingly good. I haven't necessarily been a huge fan of most of the other products from Iris and Romeo that I've tried, but I do think that this one has worked out nicely. It doesn't have any scent in it, so I was really happy about that. And I think in terms of how it looks on my under eye area and on my eyelids, I think that it actually looks nice, and that it has worked well as a spot concealer on the rest of my face as well. And so this was a bit of a surprise to me how well it worked. I'm not sure if it works as well as the Saie concealer or the Creal concealer or even the Westman Atelier one, but I do think that it has worked fairly well, and I don't think that it has been irritating at all, and in general I would be willing to wear this one. And so the next product is one that I think is kind of the strangest product that I have been reviewing. And this is from Rituel de Fille, and it is called the Soft Sorcery Concealer, and it is priced at $29. And so my experience with Rituel de Fille is that this used to be one of my very favorite brands, and they had a lot of different products that had really all natural ingredients in it and a lot of organic ingredients, and they were using all natural colors, and I thought that everything that they were doing was really beautiful. And so I really did like that company. I thought that it was very similar to RMS, but over the past couple of years, they have been making quite a few changes and kind of moving away from that kind of approach. And so I think that this concealer is indicative of their trying to pursue a different path and hoping it works out. So last year they came out with a liquid foundation, and it was called like 3-drop foundation, something like that. And I had really liked the lab sample that they had done, but before they got to the final version, they added a few ingredients, and one of those ingredients was a skincare ingredient that was frankly original, so they must be using a lab that's very innovative, but sort of frankly experimental, and that one was derived from some kind of a mold. And regardless of what the reason was, my face really, really did not like that product, and it objected very fiercely. And actually, if you look at my video on that product, you can see how red my face is. So I haven't been able to use that one, but I still have liked the company historically enough that I wanted to try this concealer anyway, and a few people asked me to try it. And so this one actually does have some experimental ingredients in it also, as well as some synthetic ingredients that are not the kind of ingredients that they would have used in the past. So the synthetic ingredients are polyurethane 100, and then there's a couple of quartz in it. And then it also has a substance in it that is made by an extremophile bacteria that is supposed to be a super antioxidant for the skin. And they say that this particular ingredient can only be derived from one source, a remarkable extremophile that is the most radiation-resistant life form ever discovered. So this is not the same ingredient that was in the foundation that they created last year. This is a different ingredient, but it's sort of in the same category because it is derived from a microorganism that is creating a super antioxidant. Because it's a different ingredient, I decided to give this a try. And this has 24 shades, and the shade that I got was Spell 126, and I thought that this color was okay on my skin. And the first time I put it on really briefly just to see how it would feel on my skin, and I don't think it itched, and I wore it for a little while, and then I took it off right away. And then the second time I put it on, I left it on for a number of hours, and I don't feel like it was exactly itchy, but when I looked in the mirror, my skin was starting to turn red again in a way that my skin really doesn't turn red. So I feel like whatever it was doing something that was kind of similar to what happened to the previous version in terms of the foundation, because that also turned my skin really bright red. And so in general, I just don't think that this is probably a good product for me to be using. And so I haven't shot any footage with me putting this on. And what I will say is that I don't think that this looked good on my skin anyway. I think that it did exacerbate the texture and the wrinkles around my eyes quite a lot. And if you are interested in this particular concealer, then there is another YouTube channel that is called The Hooded Lid that I watch a lot. And she tends to review a lot of stuff from Rituel de Fille. And so she did do a long review on this particular product. And I do think that she had some problems with it on her mature skin also. She's around my age, maybe or somewhere around 60. And so she came back and she tried a number of different ways of using it, and she said that if she put it on in a certain way, by more like tapping or something, that she was able to make it look a little bit better. But in general, she definitely had some issues with it as well. in terms of how it looked on her skin. And I don't think that it was irritating for her, but I haven't heard a lot of other people that have found this to be really super irritating for them either. I think I tend to be an exception to that. So this is all very unfortunate for me, but it is a product that maybe other people are able to use, although I think that for people that are getting older and do have issues with regard to wrinkles and fine lines, this might be a more difficult one to make work. And then the next product is from Caliray, and this is called the Caliray Hideaway Corrector, and it is $28. And Caliray is a company that was founded a couple of years ago by the woman who also founded Urban Decay before she sold it off. And so there are a couple of products from Caliray that I do really like. I do really like their mascara, although I really wish they would introduce a brown version of that. And I also do like their eyeliners, and there are a couple of other products that have been okay for me as well. And this actually seems to have become one of their more popular products, and it has gotten a lot of good reviews from various people. And this one is a silicone-based product, but it does not have any microplastics in it. And in terms of skincare ingredients, this includes sodium hyaluronate and peptides and caffeine, and it is made in France. And they are describing this as a combination of a color corrector, an illuminator, and a concealer. And so while some companies, like for instance Jones Road, try to suggest that you should not use their neutralizer pencils or their color corrector products right on your eye and then not put anything else on with them, these people seem to be suggesting that their products can also be used just as a regular concealer without necessarily using anything on with them. And I actually have always felt like if I get a good peach type of a color corrector, and then I actually can use this on my under eye areas, and then I don't necessarily need to put anything else on, but it really may depend on what kind of dark circles you have and what the rest of your complexion looks like. And I have found that the shade that I have in this, which is called Warm Sun Glow, I do think that this looks okay on my eyes, even if I just use this and I'm not using something else to go over it. And so this does come in 8 different shades. Some of them are darker, some of them are lighter. And then there are peach versions, pink versions, and then they actually have a yellow one, which is a little bit unusual, I think. And what they are saying is that in terms of choosing the shade, they say that it should be based on your skin undertone in general. And so if you have a cool undertone or a pink undertone, then they say that you can use either the colors Dawn, Cool Sunrise, or Daybreak. And then they say that if you have a neutral or peach undertones, that you can use the Warm Sun Glow, which is what I have, or the one that is called Sunset. And then they say if you have a golden or warm undertone, then you can choose between Pale Sun, which is that yellow color, Golden Hour, or Glowy Rays. And I do think that for me this has worked out pretty well, and I don't think that it has really made the wrinkles under my eyes look a lot worse. I think it's actually fairly similar to some of these other new concealers that I have liked in terms of how it looks on my face. Now this one does have silicones in it, and the other ones that I have really liked have not had silicones in them. But nonetheless, I do think that this one has worked out pretty well for me, and that it does look good, and that I can get away with wearing this without necessarily having any other complexion products on my face. And I do think that in terms of camouflaging the dark circles for me, that this is done pretty much the same as the Jones Road neutralizer sticks or the Bobbi Brown sticks. I think that I really like those products a little bit better than this one, but I think that that may just be because I really prefer a cream product rather than a liquid one, even if the liquid one is one of the better ones. And I also don't feel like this has been irritating for me at all. I think it has been perfectly fine. Now, what I will say is that I looked on the Sephora website, and I did see more than a few people that said that they thought this was irritating to their skin. And so I'm not sure what ingredients in here are irritating for them, but even though I was able to tolerate it, it sounds like people shouldn't necessarily count on being able to tolerate that if just general people on the Sephora site are complaining about it. And I do think that this one will be a good one to compare to the new color corrector liquid concealers from Kosas. And so I will try to do that soon in a video so that we can see which one might work out better or what the pros and cons are. And so now let's move back and talk about some of the older concealers. And these are concealers that were released prior to 2024. And so I will start with the one concealer from that time that I actually personally really liked, which is the Chanel Sublimage Le Correcteur Yeux. And then I also have another concealer from Chanel, which is just a Longwear concealer, which is in a tube with a doe foot like any other concealer that you may find. And so this Sublimage concealer from Chanel, this is really one of the few complexion products on the Chanel website that does not include any fragrance. And so I decided to give that a try because I was trying to put together a video having to do with all of the Chanel products that might be appropriate for people who do have sensitive skin or who are sensitive to fragrance. And so this is a concealer that I think it might only be available on the Chanel website, actually. And it comes in a pot, so it's kind of similar to the foundation that they have that is also under the Sublimage name. But that one has silicones in it, and this one actually does not have any silicones in it. And you do get a fair amount of the product in this particular pot. So even though the price is $105, in terms of the cost per milliliter, it's actually a fairly reasonable price compared to the others. So it is a little bit more expensive than actually the Westman Atelier one, but I wouldn't say that it's as expensive as you might think based on the cost of the container. And so this product is supposed to have some skincare ingredients in it. The main ingredient that they bring up that this includes, though, is this vanilla fruit water. And they tend to have a lot of the products in their Sublimage line based on that vanilla fruit water. And the Sublimage line is very, very expensive. And I think that a lot of people seem to really like it, but it is definitely on the expensive side. And a lot of their products are much more expensive than this, actually, in terms of the skincare ones. Now, what I will say about this product that I think is another deterrent for many people being willing to use it is that it is quite a bit of trouble to use because, especially if you use it the way that they are suggesting, because it does come in this pot and it tends to be pretty messy, and you aren't supposed to put your fingers in here. You're supposed to lift it up with a little spatula, which you would wash, and they're only giving you a little plastic spatula. So I thought that was kind of on the cheap side. But they also give you a little brush, and so what they're suggesting is that you take some of the product on the spatula and I think put it on your hand, and then take that little brush and rub the brush on the product, and then use this to apply the product on your under eyes. And so here is the little brush that comes with the product. So it comes in this little vinyl sleeve. And I think that the quality of this brush is not too bad, but I think that using a product that is going to get a little brush like this dirty, and then having to wash that brush on a regular basis, and then having to put it in this product, and then find a place to put this little brush to store it, because there's really not anywhere like on this container that you can store it unless you keep the product in the box. I think that this is all an awfully lot of trouble. And they do seem to be suggesting that putting your fingers in this jar would be a bad idea. And it is a fairly gentle formula. I haven't had any problems at all in terms of it irritating my skin. So I do think that probably the preservative level is not too high. Now, personally, I think that this is actually a very nice concealer, and you can look at the video footage, and I do think that it looks nice under my eyes. I don't think that it exacerbates the texture of my eyes, and so I do think that that was a really good thing, especially for the time that this was released. I think it was really, really unusual. I think it's a little bit less unusual now. The other thing that I have found with this particular concealer is that it actually makes a very, very nice skin tint for me, and that I can just mix it with a little bit of my day moisturizer from the outset, and that if I do that and then I put it on my face, I think it looks quite pretty and quite elegant, and again, it's not exacerbating the look of the texture on my face. And I think that really compared to most of the skin tints that I've tried, this one actually works a lot better. and it doesn't have any silicones in it. And although it seems like it's really expensive based on that $105 price tag, that it's actually not all that expensive if I'm using it just as a overall skin tint like that. And the other thing that I have found is that the best way for me to use this is just to take a small amount of this product and to transfer it into a small glass jar, like one that is intended for eye cream from another company. And then I will just use that small amount, and I actually will just dip my fingers into the product and then apply it to my eyes that way and then brush it in. And if I'm going to mix it, then I'll just dip in my finger and put a little bit on the back of my hand and then mix it with some moisturizer on the back of my hand. And I think that that is a lot more of a no fuss approach to this. And if I'm just using a small amount at a time, then I'm not so worried about it going bad. And I'm not needing to feel like I have this big jar around that's going to seem kind of messy every time I open this up. So all in all, now that I have found out how to use this product, I really, really like it. And I actually have been thinking about the products that I would purchase again if I were going to start all over and not to try to have a YouTube channel. And I really think that in terms of having a product that I could use as an overall skin tint product, that I very well might purchase this one rather than any of the other supposedly designated skin tints on the market. That I think this one is actually better for me in terms of how it makes my skin look. And this is a really, really highly pigmented formula. And so that is why it seems like it's really, really expensive, but nonetheless, I have used this quite often, and I am still on my first jar. And I've had this jar for 2 or 3 years, I think, and it doesn't seem to be going bad. And I think that this has been actually a really nice product. Now, I don't think that it makes a very good product to put on top of my eyelids as an eyelid primer. I think it's fine in terms of using it on a spot basis on other areas of my face, and I think it's very nice for my under eyes, and as a foundation I think it's great if I mix it with moisturizer, but in terms of it being an eyeshadow base, I don't think that it works for that. And the Chanel Sublimage concealer, that comes in only 10 different shades, and I have shade 10, and I think that this has actually been a really nice shade for me. And it is a little bit on the pinkish side, but I think that it has worked perfectly fine for me. And then another product from Chanel that is more like a standard concealer. This is called the Chanel Longwear Concealer, and it costs $45. And this is $5.85 per milliliter. So this is a little bit more like the other kinds of products that you purchase that are, like the Saie price, I guess. And I think that this is a product that does not look nearly as good on my face as the Chanel Sublimage concealer, and I don't think it looks nearly as good on my skin as some of the other concealers that were released last year. I think it's better than a lot of the concealers that I've tried, so it's not like I would absolutely be unwilling to use this, but I don't think it's really good enough that this is one that I would put in the top heat right now. And this concealer, I guess, is one that they are intending for people to use all over the face rather than just in the under area. And so they are offering more shades of this than are offered in the Sublimage concealer. And so they're actually offering 28 different shades, which is quite a lot. And the one that I have is B20, and I think that that one has been fine for me. And in terms of skin irritation issues, this is one that I definitely don't want to use on my eyelids. I do think it has been irritating for that. I don't think it's been exactly irritating when I've used it on the rest of my face, even in my under eye area. But on the other hand, I think that if it's probably is the case that if it's irritating to my eyelids, that it's probably not the greatest product for the rest of my face either. So I haven't really gotten too much use out of this. And this one does also have a color correcting line that seems to be the same formula, but that tends to have shades that are more pink or more peach colored. And so I have tried that as well. And then in addition, Chanel has one more product that they are listing on the concealers page and that I have tried. And that is called the Chanel Water Fresh Complexion Touch, and it is $70. And so that is one of those products that is like a serum that has little balls of pigment in it. So the one from Rose Incorporated, the skin tint, is like that. And there is also one from Jane Iredale that is somewhat like that. And so this one I think is thicker than either of those other products, so it does have a higher level of pigment in it, and so I think that it might be exacerbating the look of the wrinkles and stuff a little bit more than some of those other products. But I also think that this is one that I can thin down a little bit with a moisturizer, and that does look nice on my face, and it becomes more like a skin tint. And if I use it as a concealer at full strength, then I don't think it's nearly as thick as some of these other concealers, and I don't think it offers nearly as much coverage as some of the other concealers. But maybe if you were looking for a concealer that has really light coverage, then maybe you would consider that to be a concealer. And so the fact that they are offering this as a concealer option, that I think is why that one does not include any fragrance in it, and so that is why I have been able to tolerate it. And so that one does include sodium hyaluronate in it and some other skincare ingredients, and I don't think it's been irritating for my skin, and I do think I've been able to use it, but I don't think that I have used it or enjoyed it nearly as much as this Sublimage concealer. I think that one's much better. But the Water Fresh Complexion Touch, that one does have 16 shades to it. And so now let's move on, and I am talking in this section about the concealers that I would be willing to use, and then later on in the video then I will talk about the ones that I would probably choose not to use, even if they were really the only products that I currently had available to me. And I will go roughly from the most expensive to the least expensive in each of those categories. So the first one that I would be willing to use again is from Beautycounter, and this is called Skin Twin Concealer. And this was $34, and of course Beautycounter is currently shut down, and so I don't think that you can get any of their products at present, but they are claiming that they're going to restart their company in summer of 2025, and so we will see if that actually happens. But in terms of this Beautycounter concealer, I don't think that this one is as good as some of the ones that were released this past year, but I do think that it's better than most of the other concealers that were on the market before that. And I definitely used it a lot as an eyelid primer, and I would be willing to use it on the rest of my face, but at least in terms of the formula that used to be available, I think that all of the cream concealers that I had were a lot better. And that one did have silicones in it, but otherwise I thought the ingredient list looked fine. And then Haus Labs released this concealer, which is called the Triclone Concealer. They released this in 2023, and I thought that in terms of how it looked, I think that it's one of those concealers that is a lot like the Westman Atelier one, and that it seemed to me that it was really highly pigmented, and that I had to use this in really small amounts if I was going to use it in my under eye area, because it did exacerbate the look of my wrinkles a lot if I used too much of it. But that if I was really, really careful with it, that it worked out okay. I think that the Westman Atelier one is better for that purpose, or in general on my face, I think that the Westman Atelier one is better. But this one is fairly similar to the Westman Atelier one, and I do think it's pretty good in terms of how it performed. Now, what I do think that this worked really, really well for is as an eyelid primer for me, and that it wasn't irritating at all, and that when I put it down, it had a little bit of sort of a tacky feeling to it that I was a little nervous about at first, but which I actually think did work really, really well with the variety of different kinds of eyeshadows. And in terms of the formula for this one, this is a silicone-based concealer. It is made in Korea, and they claim that it has more than 20 skincare ingredients in it. And so it has some fermented ingredients and niacinamide. It has fermented arnica, which is supposed to be healing, and hyaluronic acid, several different types, and squalane. And so in general, I do think that Haus Labs products tend to be really good in terms of the formulas, in terms of how much my skin likes them. And so it might be the case that even compared to some of these recent concealers that have been released, that in terms of skincare, that this is actually a really nice product. I just don't think it's performing quite as well as some of these newer products in terms of not causing my wrinkles to look worse. And this one comes in 31 different shades, so this is one of those products that has more shades than any of the rest of them. And the shade that I chose was shade 5, which is fair with peach undertones. And I think that that has worked perfectly fine for me. I did like that shade a lot. And so next in the video footage that I have, I am trying on 2 more concealers that actually are quite popular. So one of those is the Kosas Revealer Concealer, and then the other one is the NARS Concealer. And with these concealers, I am trying on the RMS lipstick shade called Pamela. So I would say that certainly prior to 2023 that the Kosas Revealer Concealer would have been the one that I would have chosen as being the best as far as my own needs are concerned. So that one is $32. And in terms of the ingredients that are in it, it includes caffeine, sodium hyaluronate, tripeptide 5, squalene, arnica extract, fennel, and vitamin C. And so it is kind of a moisturizing type of a concealer, and it has a reputation of looking nice for people in terms of they're using it in their under eye area. And I feel like it always, for me, was fairly okay compared to most of the other concealers that were out there. And this is a product that I do feel like I was able to use on my face in general. I don't think it looked as good as cream concealers looked for me in terms of using it in my eye area, my under eye area. But I don't think it looked really terrible, and I think that it also worked fairly well for me as an eyelid primer, and I have used it quite a bit over the years as an eyelid primer. Now, one thing that I did realize recently is that it includes a chemical that is called phenethyl alcohol, and this is a chemical that is used in the fragrance industry to add a rose note to various perfumes, so it actually does have quite a strong rose scent to it. And this can be derived from roses, but I think that more often it is created synthetically in the laboratory. And my experience is that I do believe that my skin can be sensitive to phenethyl alcohol, especially, I guess, if it's in a large enough quantity. I think that with this one, it is a very mild amount of the product. I definitely think it has a mild rose scent to it, but I don't think it's as strong as some of the other products that I have tried from Kosas that have had the phenethyl alcohol in it, or that I've purchased from other brands that have phenethyl alcohol in them. And so I guess the fact that it's at a fairly low level is why my skin seems to be able to tolerate this product pretty well. But I do think that if you are sensitive to scents, either in terms of not wanting to smell them, or if you are sensitive in terms of your skin being really sensitive to them, that the fact that this has phenethyl alcohol in it definitely is a relevant fact. This also has rosemary oil in it, and I think that that is a preservative. And the phenethyl alcohol also can be a preservative, I think. And so it may be the case that some people may have their skin be irritated by that. And then another ingredient that's in here that makes me a little nervous whenever I see it is that there is an algae extract in here. And the thing about algae extract is that there seems to be potential for it to be contaminated. And so if algae extract is on an ingredient list, then I think it could be the case that sometimes it is fine and sometimes it is not fine if your skin is really sensitive to things that can be contaminants, whether it's cyanobacteria toxins or heavy metals or other things that can be in the sea. And so all in all, I've had good luck with this product, but I don't think that I would necessarily count on it always being okay. And so this particular line of products, this has 38 shades in it, so that is a pretty wide shade range. And I think that for the most part, people seem to be fairly happy with this shade range, but I do think that what I have heard and what I have also experienced myself is that it tends to lean a little bit yellow. And so therefore, if you have skin that is more on the neutral side, then you might be a little hesitant to actually go ahead and purchase one of these if it's labeled as having anything that's golden, or even, you might even be better off going a little bit more on the cool side. And it does come in both a full size, and then there's also a mini version of it that you could use if you just wanted to try it out. And this one is $16. The other thing that I want to mention about this is that I think that of all the concealers on the market, that this is one of the ones that people tend to complain about in terms of the observed lack of preservatives. So there are some preservatives in here, but they tend to be more natural preservatives. And so I think that that is one of the reasons that my skin has done well with the product. But it also is the case that there is the potential for this to go bad, possibly. And some people have reported that it has gotten dark, and they are suggesting that they think that it has mold in it. Now, whether or not that is just the product becoming discolored or whether it's actually mold, I'm not sure. And I haven't heard of any of these people having had the product for less than 6 months. I think this is something that occurs as the product gets older. So I think that especially with this particular product, you may not want to plan to keep it for a long time. And so that being the case, being able to purchase a little size of this one if you're not planning to use it too often, that might make sense too. And in terms of my demonstrating the product in the video, when I actually purchased this product on my own, I purchased the color 2.5C, and I think that was a little bit better of a match. This is one that I got as a sample, which is just the mini size, and that one is 03W, and so I think that that one is a little bit yellow on my skin. And then the product that I have next is from NARS, and apparently this is the best-selling liquid concealer that is in the high-end marketplace, high-end or luxury, so not drugstore. And this is called the NARS Radiant Cream Concealer, and it is $32, and it is in 30 different shades. And you actually can get all 30 of those shades in a mini version for $15, and this is a mini version that I actually got free from buying some other stuff from NARS. And when I looked on the Sephora site, it did list the Tower 28 concealer as selling more units than this particular concealer, but the Tower 28 one is priced much lower, and so I'm not sure that I would consider Tower 28 to be high-end. That's more like almost drugstore prices. And so to my understanding, this product has been around since 2013, and it is therefore from the era of NARS before they decided that they were going to kind of clean things up. So ever since the beginning of 2022, I have felt like everything that NARS has introduced has been really terrific in terms of both their ingredient lists and in terms of how well it performs on my skin. And so I've been really happy to see that, and I've been especially happy to see that they have been able to do that without anyone complaining about it or noticing, really. And so I think that's been a real accomplishment for them. But with regard to this concealer, I don't feel like there's any strong impetus for them to change it because it is selling so many units and because it doesn't have anything in that people are really insisting be taken out of it. So with some of the products, they've been forced to change them because they included cyclic silicones or talc. But in this case, they seem to be taking their time in terms of reformulating it, and it seems to be selling perfectly fine for them. And I do think that in terms of how it looks on my skin, I thought that it looked okay. And of the concealers that were released before 2024, I thought it was one of the ones that was somewhat better in terms of how it looked. But I also do feel like it was more irritating to my skin than I would prefer. And that especially in terms of using it as an eyelid primer, I think that that was totally inappropriate, and I would never do that. And I don't think it was particularly good for my skin in general, but I don't feel like it's bad enough that I want to just say this is too irritating, not going to use it anymore. I have used it periodically to try it out for this channel, but in terms of actually using it, I wouldn't choose to use this one just because I don't think it's great for my skin. And this is a silicone-based concealer, and it has ingredients that include magnolia bark extract, grapeseed extract, and vitamin E, and they are claiming that this helps to reduce redness, hydrates, firms, and helps to improve the skin barrier. And I feel like whether or not that's true or not, there are other ingredients in here that are probably just bad. And in terms of the shade that I have here, I have Cafe au Lait, which is L2.4, which is light with neutral tones and a light peach tone. And I think that, I'm not sure how many choices I got when I picked this one out, but I do think that this has actually been a good color for me, and that if that were all that I was concerned about, this would actually be a product that I could use and that I think looks nice on me. And then the next concealer is from Typology, and this is $29, and the skincare ingredients in here are niacinamide, caffeine, jojoba, and corn flour hydrolate, and it is made in France. And Typology is actually one of my favorite companies, and I do really like their foundation as well as many of their skincare products, and I really like their tinted lip balms. So I do think it's been a really nice company, and most of the products have been good. And I actually kind of like this concealer when I first got it, and I think it offers a lot less coverage in terms of, I think it's more like a light coverage in terms of using it on the face. I think it's almost like a thick foundation, and I think that it looked very nice on my skin, but I don't think that a lot of people would be happy with this one because it does have a fairly low level of coverage. And you do get a full 15 milliliters of the product, and so even though it's $29, it's not very expensive on a per milliliter basis. It's $2.30. So that is really, I think, the least expensive concealer that I am reviewing here, but again, you're not getting very much coverage from it. And I think that I used it a little bit, and I thought that I liked it, but in general, it wasn't a product I used very much. And I definitely think that that one I probably shouldn't be kept around and used for more than 6 months. And a concealer that I used when I first started to become interested in makeup back in 2020, 2021 was the MAC Pro Longwear Concealer, and that one is $28, and it comes in a little pump. And this is silicone based, and this one does actually have some cyclic silicones in it. And they say that it is sweat and humidity resistant, and it comes in 16 shades. And I actually had a relatively good experience with that one. At the time, I really wasn't sure which brands to use or what I was looking for, and I was reacting to a lot of products. But I actually felt like that one was not too bad, and it does have a lot of ingredients in it that I might be suspect of now. But I feel like I was able to use it on my face in general, and that it looked nice. I don't think it looked bad in my under eye area. I even used it sometimes as an eyelid primer, and I thought that it was okay for that. And so in general, of the concealers that I tried at the beginning, I really did like that one, and I'd be a little interested in going back and trying it out and comparing it now that I've tried all these other products. But I think that one's not a bad one, and a lot of people do really like it. And it is supposed to be sweat and humidity resistant, but I never felt like at the time that I was unable to get it off at the end of the day. And then another product that I tried fairly early on and that I kind of thought was okay as well is this Well People BioCorrect concealer, and this comes in a little tube, and so it is one that is a lot thinner than a lot of these other concealers, but I do think that it performed fairly well. I do think that it gave a reasonable amount of coverage, and that I was able to dab a little bit of it on, and I don't think that it emphasized the texture on my face as much as a lot of these liquid concealers did, and so I would be a little interested in getting another tube of this and giving it a try. And then in the next video footage, I am trying on 2 different concealers. One is the LYS concealer, which was released a couple years ago, and then one is the Ilia concealer. And the RMS lipstick that I am trying in this video footage is one of the nude ones, and this one is called May. And so the Ilia True Skin Serum Concealer, this one was released, it seems like 2019 or maybe earlier. And the skincare ingredients in this include aloe and glycerin and vitamin C. And so they are saying that this is supposed to visibly brighten, even out skin tone, and reduce fine lines and wrinkles. I'm not actually seeing any silicones in this one. And this concealer is available in 20 shades, And I have shade SC 1.5, which is supposed to be light with cool undertones. Now, maybe it's that it is rated as light rather than fair, but I also think that, I've had this tube around for a while, and I had forgotten that I had it. It was buried at the bottom of a box, and so I'm wondering if this may have oxidized just sitting in the box, but I actually hadn't opened it until just a week or so ago. But in any case, I don't think that this looked very good in the context of the wrinkles that I have. I think that it is one of the ones that I would not use, in preference to not using any kind of concealer or foundation at all personally. Now, one that I did like quite a bit more and that I think doesn't look too bad on me at all is this one from LYS. And this is called the Triple Fix Full Coverage Brightening Concealer. And this one is $20, and it is also a pretty reasonable price in terms of cost per milliliter. And this one is made in Taiwan, and so I think that LYS is fairly unusual in terms of having found a company in Taiwan that is making cosmetics for them. And I do think that a lot of the cosmetics that I have used from them have been okay. And this one has 25 shades, and I have shade LP4, which is supposed to be vanilla fair skin with pink undertones, and I think it has not been too bad for me. I think that it kind of looks okay. You can see what you think. There's no silicones in this one, and in terms of the ingredients it has in it that are supposed to be like skincare, it has Indian ginseng, which is supposed to be combating skin stress and visible signs of aging, turmeric, which is supposed to be an antioxidant, and hyaluronic acid, which is supposed to be a hydrator. And I think this was introduced in 2022, so it's fairly new. Now, I think that for me, this is actually a pretty good performance. I don't think that it is as good as some of the other concealers that were released recently, but it is a less expensive concealer, and so if you're interested in getting something that is more moving down towards something that's closer to what a drugstore price would be, but you're looking for something that's not going to be irritating and that looks fairly nice, I think this one is not too bad, and I think that 25 shades is a pretty good range for them. And so now let's move down and talk about a few more concealers that I would not choose to use now that I have tried them on a bunch of different times and also looked at this video footage. So in the next video footage, I am trying on the Armani Luminous Silk Concealer, which is $42, and I also am trying on the Pat McGrath Sublime Perfection Concealer, which is $35, and the RMS Nude Lipstick shade that I'm trying on with these is Pamela. So the Armani Luminous Silk Concealer, this one is one that I think was just somewhat irritating for my skin. It definitely would be too irritating for me to use on my eyelids, and I don't think that it's really great for my skin in general. Now, I will say that if I compare this to the Luminous Silk Foundation, that this is actually a lot closer to being wearable for me. So the Luminous Silk Foundation, that one includes both fragrance and also parabens, and that one irritated my skin like crazy when I did experiment with using that back in my early days of experimenting with different kinds of products. And this one is kind of more on the borderline, and I think that when I tried it on in the video footage, I think it doesn't look terrible on my eyes. I personally don't think it looks as good as some of these newer concealers that are not irritating at all, but I think that it is better than a lot of the stuff in the past that I used, but I never have used this because I just don't feel comfortable using it in terms of how it has been feeling on my skin. And this one includes 22 shades, and the shade that I am trying on here is shade 4.5, which is called Light to Medium with Neutral Undertones. And I'm not really seeing silicones on the ingredient list for this. I'm seeing some other silicone-like substances. It seems to have been released maybe in 2020. And in terms of the skincare ingredients in this, there's caffeine, vitamin C, and glycerin. And then the next one is Pat McGrath, and I think that even among sort of like ordinary people, that the Pat McGrath concealer has the reputation for being one that is particularly thick, and maybe I just giving you a lot of coverage, and so that may be something that a lot of people like. But I think in terms of not exacerbating the look of my wrinkles, I think it's at a disadvantage if it's trying to provide full coverage like that. And so I think that on me, I don't think it looks really great. I don't think it was irritating enough that I wouldn't be able to wear it. I don't think it's as good as some of these other products that are out there, but I think it would have been acceptable if it weren't exacerbating the look of my wrinkles. And there are 34 shades in this, and I am showing shade L4, which is supposed to be light with peach undertones, and I don't object to the shade. I think that the shade was actually okay in this for me. And then the next video footage shows two different concealers, both of which were released in 2023. So one of these is the Tower 28 concealer, and then the other one is the Makeup by Mario concealer. And the RMS lipstick, that is a nudes version, is in the shade Jane. And so the Tower 28 one, actually a lot of people do really like this concealer, and it is a reasonable price. It's only $22, and I would say that a lot of people that are younger than I am and that have skin that's, even if their skin is dry, that some people do really like this one. But I feel like when I have used it that it really is emphasizing the wrinkles in my eye area, and that I feel like it's also a little bit drying on my skin in general, and I'm not sure if everyone agrees with that, but I do kind of feel like if I put this on my skin and then I wear it all day, by the end of the day the skin on that part of my face is starting to seem much more dry than on the other side if I'm not wearing a concealer there. And this one has 20 shades, and I am demonstrating shade 3.0 CC, which is light with warm peach undertones, and I think that this shade was okay for me. And they are saying that this has medium buildable coverage, and the ingredients in here that are supposed to be for the skincare include hyaluronic acid, which is a hydrator, centella asiatica, which is gotu kola, and lysine, which is supposed to support the production of collagen and repair and prevent dryness. And then it also has lactobacillus ferment, caffeine, and pomegranate. And so there are, again, a lot of people that do really like this one. Some people say this is their absolute favorite concealer, and I don't think that they're just talking about the price. So I am not necessarily suggesting to other people that they shouldn't try it. I just don't feel like for me that it has been ideal. And then the other product is the Makeup by Mario Surreal Skin Concealer, which is $29. And I was a little bit enthusiastic about trying this product because I did really like the Makeup by Mario Surreal Skin Foundation. And so I thought that maybe this concealer would be also looking good on my aging skin, but I don't feel like that was the case. I do think that it actually did exacerbate the look of the texture on my skin more than I would like. And in terms of skincare ingredients, the ones that I'm seeing here are caffeine and fermented marine microorganisms. Now that makes me a little bit nervous, but I didn't find this one to be irritating especially. I just didn't especially like the way it looks on me. And I actually don't feel like I would want to use it on my eye area. When I've tried that, I haven't felt that comfortable with it. So maybe it's not really that good on my skin, but I haven't actually experienced any irritation to it. And this concealer has 26 shades, and I am showing shade 120, which is light peach. And I think the shade has not been bad for me. I think that's been fine. And then next I have a concealer that is from Saie, and this is a different concealer than the slip tint one, and it is still on the market. And this is called the Hydrabeam concealer, and it is $26. And my understanding is that this is a fairly light coverage concealer, and that it is intended primarily for the under eye area. And I felt at the time that this one actually almost looked a little bit glowy, and that is not something I really feel comfortable with regard to my under eye area. My goal is really not to brighten that area or to make it look shiny or shimmery or anything like that. I feel like it is a problem for me in terms of the wrinkles as well as the color, and so therefore using a color that is similar to the rest of my skin tone is a better idea. And so this one I didn't think looked really great. I thought it was generally exacerbating the look of the texture when I used it in this whole eye area. And I don't think that it looked very good on the rest of my skin either because, again, it was too glowy. Now, I did use this really, really frequently for quite a while as an eyelid primer, and I do think that it worked really, really well for that. And in that case, I think that it was the glowiness of it was not necessarily a bad thing, and that it actually, in terms of the texture of the product, I don't think that it was too sticky or anything to work well with my eyeshadows. So I did get a lot of use out of this tube, and I think that for that reason, if I was looking for an eyelid primer, that I wouldn't be unwilling to use this one, but I think that their new version, the Slip Tint Concealer, that one is really better in all respects as far as I'm concerned. And then Fitglow is a skincare company that in general I do like quite a lot. And this is a concealer that I think is much more supposed to be skincare. And in terms of the way that it makes my skin look, I just don't think that it works well with my wrinkles at all. So it has an odd list of organic ingredients, and the ingredients are castor oil, beeswax, grapeseed oil, laurel laurate, jojoba oil, and carnauba wax. And so all of those are things that are quite oily, quite heavy. And so I think that if you are don't have a lot of wrinkles or other kinds of issues, and if you do have really dry skin, then this could be something that you might want to try. And it also has some fermented ingredients in it, the way that most of the products from Fitglow have fermented ingredients, and caffeine and green tea. And so I think that if your skin's not really wrinkly like mine is, that maybe this might be a good product, especially if you have really dry skin. But for me, and I've tried this in both their Correcteur shade and also this one, which is a concealer shade, I just think that this looked really, really bad on my eyes and on my face in general. It's just not a good product for me. And of course, because it is so greasy and waxy, I don't think that this would be an appropriate eyelid primer at all. Now, I've never tried the Tarte Shape Tape product. I thought that based on the ingredients and based on what I had heard from the product, I didn't think that would be appropriate for me at all. But I did try a product from Tarte that is called the Saie Powerflex Concealer. And I only got a small sample of that. And I think that this one, based on the notes that I have from when I was trying it, I do think that it emphasized the texture around my eyes a lot. And I didn't even have quite as high standards back then as I do now. And so that is not one that I would purchase again. And when I was at Sephora, I actually did try their Kulfi Main Match Concealer, which is $26 on my face, and I actually did put it on my eyelids. And I'm not sure that that's the most sanitary thing to be doing, is to be trying liquid concealers at the Sephora store. But I didn't have any problems with it. I thought that in terms of it going on my eyelids, I thought that it actually was fine for that. And I would be willing to use that as an eyelid primer, but in terms of the use on the rest of my face, I do think that that exacerbated my wrinkles a lot. And so I do think that some people like that concealer, and certainly in terms of the ingredients in it, I think that the ingredients were okay and that it wasn't irritating, but I still wouldn't use it. And then a really long time ago, I tried the Bare Minerals Original Liquid Concealer, which is $27 now, and that is still on the market. And I did feel like that one exacerbated the texture of my eyelid area a whole lot, and it also felt dry on my skin. And then the final one is a concealer that I picked up really, really early on from Natural Grocers, and this one is called the Zuzu Luxe Concealer, and I see that it is still on the market and that it is $19. And I think that that one was the worst concealer of all in terms of the way that it made my skin look. I don't think that it was noticeably irritating. Just because something is sold at Natural Grocers doesn't mean that it's necessarily not going to be irritating for me. But in this case, I think that I was able to tolerate it. But otherwise, it was really unusable. Boy, that really looked really bad based on my recollection and based also on my notes. So thank you very much for watching all the way to the end of the video. And if you would be willing to share any experiences that you have had with liquid concealers, either positive or negative, or if you have any suggestions of concealers that you think that I have missed out on, that you think that I should try, then I would be super interested in hearing about that. In addition, if you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, then I hope you will go ahead and do that. And if you like this video, then I hope you will hit like, because supposedly that helps the algorithm. And Coco and I do love you very much, so I hope you are having a good January. Thanks very much for watching. Goodbye. La